If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland Street Scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, boy, I screwed that up. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure to check out our Patreon. We just put up a new show today on Patreon. What was it? I forget. But there's some new content up on Patreon tonight. You can go check it out. Also, too, our archives you can always find at Spreaker.com. And, by the way, too, I put up repeats every night on Spreaker.com. And if you haven't seen them this week, it's because Facebook gave me like a 7-day ban because I was complaining about those migrants getting kidnapped by Governor DeSantis, my wonderful governor here, and dropped off at Martha's Vineyard at the tune of $600,000. And then, about a week later, I did a whole report on this last week, but then like a week later, they sent another plane up empty, and they charged $900,000. Just unbelievable what is going on. We got so much going on in the news this week. What they do is when they release stuff they want to bury, they release it on Friday night. So then people, go away for the weekend. They don't watch the news. They're not talking to their friends at work. So stuff gets buried. And that's what we've had this week here and today. So let's start with this. My notes go on forever. That's why I'm talking so fast. I don't want to miss anything. First of all, after this show here, I'm playing an interview I did with Mike Rothmiller, who's the former LAPD intelligence detective. I played repeats with him all week long. He's been coming on the show for 10 years now. Did a book about Marilyn Monroe, Chappaquiddick. We've discussed many, many topics. It was fascinating. He was working back, O.J. Simpson. This guy worked so many big cases and knows a lot of stuff. So he just did a book about Frank Sinatra, and so we discussed that. And, I shared some stories. I actually was in the same restaurant, Bravo Johnny's in Manhattan, with Frank Sinatra. It's a kind of a funny story because the guys, I was 25 years old, and I was with my best friend. Oh my God, I forget his name. Fred, my best friend Fred, not Fred Gotbetter, the other Fred. The one that was he was 55 years old. I was 25. He was my best friend. And so we were meeting some of his buddies at this restaurant. He knew everybody over there. It's an organized crime place, And so one of the guys at our table, the way he made his fortune, he had a little tiny ad in the back classified section of like Hustler magazine selling this land, parcels of this investment land that he owned up in Canada. It was a huge scam that, he scammed these poor guys, masturbating into the back of this magazine, selling them this worthless land. I think I told the story a couple of times before. The guy actually blew his nose into the napkin because he was using all this coke. He was like 60 years old himself. So that's my little story about running into Frank Sinatra. The same night there, Frank Sinatra, Don King was there, and John McEnroe and Tatum O'Neill were all there at the restaurant that night. It was a very nice place, Bravo Gianni's in Manhattan. So we also tell a little story about Harry Reid. I've told the story before about how Harry Reid went to start his car. His wife went to start the car. And they found out the car wouldn't start, and they found it was a wire from the spark plug to the gas tank, right? And it turns out who did that but Jack Gordon. Jack Gordon, who was LaToya Jackson's husband there for a while, who actually went to the FBI, about allegations about Michael Jackson. He went to the district attorney's office in California and made official complaints against Michael Jackson, but they didn't do anything about it. That's largely unknown. Very few people know that story. But Jack Gordon, if you look up his Wikipedia page, he owned these massage parlors. Everybody he ever went into business with died. Okay. Didn't matter, wherever it was. So supposedly he donated some money to Harry Reid, and things didn't go the way they wanted to. And so there we have that. I met this woman who dated Frank Sinatra years ago. She worked for the Ron Paul campaign at the time I met her, but she applied for a job with me. Her name was Diane McHugh. Now, she's fallen off the face of the earth, but you can get her book called Sinatra and the Mall. And the book is going for $1,000. And she was dating Frank Sinatra when she was like 14, 15 years old. Okay, he was a grown man, 30 years old. And then she was also dating the mob boss, Bernie Brown. And then there was some other gangster involved too in this whole big story here. But she was a very nice woman. She had Sammy Goldstein was the other one. So in Hoboken when she was, and there's a picture of her with Sinatra when she's just a little girl. She's dressed up with makeup and stuff like that, looking like an adult, but she's just a little kid. Okay, But unfortunately, I've tried to get her on the show. She's gone. Can't find her. I've tried many ways to locate her. She fell off the face of the earth. There's a lot of people in Nevada who go off the grid. There's a couple of spots where you can go live. The land is free. It's in the desert. It's like a little community there. You can go up there with a trailer or a motor home, and or even storage container, shipping containers, and build a little house for yourself and just live up there. So that's Mike Rothermiller about his Frank Sinatra book. Then after that, we have an interview I did about the death of Natalie Wood. The guest, I think his name is Chris Todd, and it's okay. The guy's not a very popular guest. People don't seem to like him, and he was nagging me about publishing this show, so I put it up for him now. Let's see what else is up. Okay. Let me check the time. Okay, we're doing good. And chat room is filling up. Alex Jones. Okay. Let's start with Alex Jones. A lot of people aren't noticing this, but there's a new Alex Jones defamation trial about Sandy Hook. There's another one. He's being sued by other Sandy Hook families. I believe there's going to be like 15 lawsuits. So you can watch it on that Truth and Crime, Justice and Crime and Justice, what's his name there? Dan Abrams' YouTube channel. He runs that website. And yeah, by the way, his sister was the judge in my case with the Katie Doe lawsuit, the Trump Epstein rape lawsuit. You know what? I was going to do a whole show about that and her connections to Elliot Abrams and stuff. It's a very interesting family. A lot of stuff going on there, a lot of moving parts, as they like to say. So Alex Jones is back on trial. He testifies yesterday. I didn't get a chance to watch it live, so I watched it today. Because there was really nothing going on this week. I had a very busy week, and I didn't have anything to talk about tonight. But then suddenly, all the crap hit the fan all at once. We got Matt Gaetz. We got the Kincora School for Boys up there, the boys' school up there. I think it's Ireland. I heard from Richard Kerr today. We're going to be getting into all that. But let's start with Alex Jones, because I got to tell you something, man. I've been involved in a lot of trials. I'm watching this case here. It is just fascinating what's going on here. I really encourage you to go and watch it. It should be edited down, but there's a lot of parts you can skip ahead. Alex Jones shows up for this trial. He does these press conferences out on the street before he goes in. And he just goes there into the middle of the press and just starts yelling at the top of his lung. There's no preparation for this. There was even a second press conference today where his lawyer wasn't even aware of what he was talking about. There was no, and he even gives away some of their legal strategy. Okay, he testified all day yesterday, and it was an absolute circus. First of all, he can't even button up his jacket. He's all hungover. He's sitting there all hungover at in the chair there, in the witness stand. And the judge keeps admonishing him not to interrupt, just answer yes or no, not to interrupt the lawyers. And when his own lawyer is objecting, not to answer, to stop talking, to stop answering. And she's talking to him like he's a moron, like he's a simpleton. Which I'm really starting to wonder, man, how this guy runs this huge operation like this when he's this completely out of it. In my opinion, at this point, in my estimation, I think he is incompetent to stand trial. He's incompetent to assist in his own defense. So he's up there, and they came up with a strategy. And I know what the strategy is because he blurted it out at the press conference today. What happened was there was a motion in limine. And the judge ordered that there were certain things that Alex Jones was not allowed to talk about on the stand. He's prohibited from talking about his bankruptcy, some of his theories. He can't say that, he's not guilty. There's a lot of things he can't say. So this new attorney came up with this strategy, and it's brilliant. This new attorney is a very technical attorney. He's technical with the law. He's technical with procedure. So he's a good litigation attorney. Okay, I'll give you that. Now, so whenever the plaintiff's attorney asks Alex Jones a question. He objects, saying, Your Honor, he can't answer that because it's covered under your order of things he's prohibited in talking about. But the problem is Alex Jones yells out the answer okay, over his own attorney's objection. So you have Alex Jones yelling out the answer, his own attorney yelling out objection, objection, objection. It's complete and utter chaos in this courtroom. Now, we know about this strategy because what happened was yesterday's testimony of Alex Jones was such a disaster that both the plaintiff and the defense agreed that, hey, this just isn't working. It's just chaos. He's not going to return to the witness stand today, and the defense can call him later on in their case in chief, and he'll be a witness then, and he can be cross-examined then by the plaintiff. So, and Alex Jones is not showing up for court. Okay, he's going back to Austin, Texas, but instead he shows up and does another press conference out in front of the courtroom where he's again yelling at these reporters. His attorney there was no preparation for this. His attorney didn't even know he was going to show up and do this. So it is my estimation he is incompetent to stand trial at this point. And I got to tell you something. We've talked about this before. I talked about that time I had to spend 2 hours there sitting in the competency court. Only the first time I've ever done this. I had to sit there in the competency court where all these defendants they had already been declared incompetent, or they were being sent to be evaluated for their competence. And they're just standing up and they're rambling on. One guy says, well, when the evaluator came to speak to you, why didn't you talk to him? And he goes, oh, I did. I talk to him all the time. I talk to him through the mirror. Okay. So some of these guys are faking it, but some of these guys were legit mentally incompetent to stand trial. And the sad part is when they send them to the psychiatric institute, and I told the whole story about this, all the problems I had. I wasn't able to visit my client. We had to finally call the governor and get the governor's office involved to get me in there and to get them to pick up the phone down there and let the parents talk to their daughter. But what happens is, when you go to the mental institution, the psychiatric facility, all they do is tell you, hey, when you get to court, don't interrupt the judge. If you don't understand something, just say, I don't understand. But don't talk, just be quiet. So they're not even being helped at all, or they're just being told not to act up in court. So I've sat there through that one time. It was about 2 or 3 hours. I had to sit through all those cases. Because the judge was so patient, she let each defendant stand up and communicate. And sometimes it would just go off the rails. But at almost, especially when I used to do a lot of criminal defense work, almost once a week or once a month, you'd have one of these sovereign citizens or these Moors get up there. And it was so sad at their arraignment. You're pleading guilty or not guilty, and they're trying to argue, all this crazy stuff, the straw man, and, the corporation, the United States corporation, all this crazy stuff. It's just ridiculous. And many times, I remember one guy, he was at the park, and he had a knife because he was eating with a sharp knife. And somehow he came into contact with police, and they arrested him for possession of this knife. It was like a steak knife that he was eating with. But still, I guess he couldn't get along with them either, and he got arrested. He winds up here. And the judge is saying, listen, if you plead guilty, we can give you time served. You can walk out today. He goes, oh, that never works. It never happens. And then the judge says, would you like to speak to an attorney? Oh, I've talked to attorneys. There's no help. So finally the judge gave up and said, okay, if I have to give you a psych evaluation, you can't plead not guilty. Because otherwise they just would have let him go. So anyway, that's Alex Jones, okay? And I encourage everybody to go find his testimony online. They have the press conferences and all that kind of stuff like that. He's dead in the water. He's lost all these cases, okay? And by the way, too, if you look up the last time I talked about this Alex Jones defamation trials, I've actually had some personal contact with some of the people that have been mentioned in these trials, like Jim Fetzer, who turned out to be an absolute anti-Semite, that I blocked him and banned him from my my emails. And he wasn't even trying to be polite about this. This guy was Jew hate, outright Jew hate, you know? Not anti-Zionist or globalist, anti-Jew, okay? Jew, all right? You can't get more blatant than this guy's bigotry and his disgusting anti-Semitism. So I dealt with him. And then the other character was this Wolfgang Halbug, which turned out to be a complete nut, too, as well. Trying to come to me for help, okay? So we covered all that. Alex Jones. The trial is a circus. Let's just put it that way. Okay, let's see how we're doing on time. We're doing good. Alex went through the... Yeah, a lot of people say Alex was one-time normal. I've never seen Alex normal. Okay. And by the way, too, the last time I put Alex Jones in the title, let's not get into that. Okay. Sidney Powell. You remember Sidney Powell? And very interesting, Sidney Powell is one of the attorneys who was working for Trump to overturn the election results. She was at that wild White House meeting called Off the Rails. I did a show about this Off the Rails White House meeting that had Patrick Byrne and Giuliani was there and all these characters. It's just as wild, and it's the funniest article you'd ever read in your life. And I've done some reporting on that myself. Now, more recently... when I had on Mr. Patrick Berge, who's this military guy who tried to help Sidney Powell, tried to help Patrick Byrne with his expertise in computer forensics, but could not, because he could not confirm any things that they were claiming. Okay, and he's their friend. He's on their side. He's pro-Trump galore. Okay, he's MAGA. What do they call that? Ultra MAGA or extreme MAGA, something like that? He's like that. So what happened was, he believes that Patrick Byrne is the source of the FBI search warrant. He's the confidential informant that the search warrant affidavit is based on. That's been blocked out. Because right after the search warrant was executed, he inserted his own affidavit into the case. Okay, using the same case number where he is going on and on and on for reasons unknown that Sidney Powell has no... security clearance. She has no top secret security clearance. So why would he be saying that? So Patrick Berge did his own affidavit where he says he believes Patrick Byrne is the informant. And once again mentioning Sidney Powell. Now Sidney Powell yesterday was supposed to appear at a grand jury in Georgia because of a very strange, by the way, there's the same grand jury situation that's attached to the search warrant execution on Mr. Mike Lindell, my pillow guy. Okay, what a bunch of characters in this whole case. By the way, check out last week's show too about this whole guy Greg Phillips with the whole right to vote, vote now thing, and all that guys who was there at the top secret golf meeting there with Trump when he made that top secret last minute meeting to D.C. trip to D.C. Sidney Powell didn't show up for her grand jury testimony. No one knows why. She has not issued a statement why. Publicly, they're just saying, well, maybe there was some confusion with the subpoena. She wasn't aware. But she's, you kind of know these things when you got to show up for court, especially if you're an attorney. Okay. But now that this My Pillow guy had his phone seized, she might be worried to step foot in Georgia because there could be a warrant for her arrest there. Okay. At this stage of the game. Because she is on videotape, her with some others entering the electoral offices there and downloading electoral data that they're not allowed to have. And in the Patrick Berge affidavit, he mentions that data on each voter could be worth as much as $2,000 per voter. Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts here. So Sidney Powell does not show up. So let's keep our eye on that. Goodbye, Sidney Powell. Now, let's see what else. How we're doing on time. We're doing good. Matt Gaetz. Okay, who was the first guy to tell you about Matt Gaetz? Well, it was Ed Opperman, okay, because I got some word through the grapevine about what was going on with Matt Gaetz down here in Florida. And then I even put some tabloid guys on it, okay? So I've been talking about Matt Gaetz before anybody, Okay, and the whole thing about his adopted son, I did shows about his adopted son Nestor, and the suspicious, mysterious behaviors and circumstances about all that. His quickie marriage to this woman who seems to be some kind of a beard. He's alleged to have been sending Venmo money to teen girls to bring them to these parties, which he doesn't really deny. But then there was his buddy, Joel Greenberg, who was the tax collector here. Now, in Florida, the tax collector is like the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and it's the way they do the property tax. They run it out of the same audience, and it's pretty efficient, to tell you the truth. It's a lot better than any other DMV I've ever been involved in my life. You know, in Vegas, you're there for 4 hours. Back in New York, you're there for 4 hours. Here, you're in and out pretty quick in some of these small towns. But for the trade-off for getting that little quick service is you got to deal with this drug addict, Joel Greenberg, okay, who would turn out to be absolutely crazy. And there's some serious allegations here, some serious witness testimony that he and Matt Gaetz would go into the DMV, the tax collector's office, in the middle of the night and go through the box of returned driver's licenses. You know, when you come from another state or your license is expired, you turn that in, they give you a new one. Well, they were getting them from 21-year-old girls that they could give to these young girls so they can go into the bar and drink and stuff like that and travel under these names. Now, you say, oh, Ed, that's crazy. Well, Greenberger pled guilty to all this. Greenberger pled guilty to sex trafficking, okay? He pled guilty to all kind of financial shenanigans and all kind of financial crimes. The reason why, okay, I forgot to tell you why I'm talking about Matt Gaetz, because today came out, CNN said that the Department of Justice prosecutors recommend against charging Representative Gaetz in sex trafficking probe, okay? Now, that's the CNN article. They've got top secret inside information that's telling them this. And the reason why the DOJ prosecutors is recommend against this charge is because the witness in the case, Joel Greenberger, is so crazy and so unreliable. And I'm going to get into, I did a whole show about that too, and there's a videotape out there about why we'll be getting into. But before we get into that, Joel Greenberger his attorney has a response to this article where he says, Mr. Fritz Scheller says, I have not received any information from the government regarding its decision to abandon its investigation and prosecution of Matt Gaetz. Nevertheless, based on my knowledge of the events, I would be surprised by such a decision. Now, he's getting this information because his client, Joel Greenberger, has agreed to testify and give testimony against Matt Gaetz. Now, the government's saying, well, Joel Greenberger is so crazy, Matt Gaetz' best friend, is so crazy and so unreliable and such a nut job, and he's so twisted, sick, and perverted that we can't put him on the stand because he's nuts. And let me tell you something, I got to agree with them. This is a pretty sick guy. It starts out, they put him on house arrest. He's got an ankle bracelet. He gets charged with these crimes, all kind of financial crimes, shenanigans. He was giving contracts to his friends, all kind of stuff, right? But then also to these sex trafficking charges, where they're getting these false IDs in the middle of the night. So they put him on house arrest. He leaves his house and travels to his mother and father-in-law's house in a whole other county, shows up there wasted, enters into their home without permission because his wife is staying there been going out with another guy, okay? A male friend, okay? That's the story. So they call the police. The wife calls the police. The police show up. It's all on video. They got their body. You can watch the body cameras. It's on. You can find it on YouTube. Okay. And he's wasted. He's bipolar. Okay. He's saying, "Oh yeah, I don't know anybody." But the wife and the father-in-law are saying, "Yeah, we're scared of this guy. He's crazy." The wife starts saying, his parents are buying me a house. She's whispering to these cops on the body cam that the parents are paying her off. They're loaded. They've got all this money. They're buying her a house to keep her quiet and to keep her mouth shut. So when it turns out that he violated the conditions of his supervised release on bail, there's another YouTube video where you hear the U.S. Marshal calling 911 or calling, there's a recording. You can hear the recording. And it goes over 911. It goes over the police airways. But they say, hey, listen, we got to go down and pick this guy up. But we hear that you guys have a relationship with him. Can you go pick him up? Some big shots get on the line and say, oh, yeah, call me on my phone so we can talk about this. Okay? So Joel Greenberger decides to hold a standoff, an armed standoff, when his buddies come to arrest him. And what this is the star witness against Matt Gaetz, okay? Who his own wife is saying is bipolar. His own wife is saying, yeah, his parents are paying me off. They're buying me a huge house for a lot of money. And he's there, and they're calling him on the phone. This is all you can find. All this is on YouTube. As a matter of fact, I have it in the Patreon, in a free section of Patreon. And he's telling these cop buddies of his outside, well, I know I'm on supervised release, but I've got a bunch of guns in here. And what I've done is I've taken tannerite, which is tannerite's like these targets you can shoot at and they explode. And I've taken tannerite and I've surrounded them with BBs and nails and screws. And if I shoot them, I have them buried in the lawn out in front of my house, on the sides of my house. So if you approach my lawn or my house, I'm going to shoot them and blow you up with an IED, an improvised explosive device. Now, if you or I had said this, we'd be dead right now. Okay, let's face it. Okay, I know I told the story. I pulled a gun on a couple of cops, but that was in the 80s. Okay, you can't do that anymore. Okay, but this guy's it's on tape. It's on tape. And then he's also saying the cops are joking around out there saying, "Oh yeah, he got caught talking to little girls on his computer." Now that he's not even charged with that, so we don't even know what that is. Then they tell him, "Listen, just come out. Close the door behind you. We're not going to search the house. You're not going to catch any new charges for being out on bail with weapons and improvised explosive devices." Wouldn't that be a new charge, in a normal case? It's so corrupt down here, man. Honestly, I should get out of here. But not only that, he's telling them, oh, now I got to go to jail. I'm going to be dope sick in jail. So he's admitting that he's on some kind of opiates or heroin or something, man. Who knows what he's on, but it's dope sick is associated with heroin or fentanyl, something like that. So that's the star witness against Matt Gaetz. His attorney says, hey, I don't know anything about them dropping these charges against Gaetz. I don't believe they're going to drop these charges against Gaetz. I believe that there's going to be a reaction article about this, about some of the other very serious allegations that I know about Matt Gaetz and I know about this situation. Okay, I've even brought in super tabloid folks into this that they know about it as well, and they're digging around looking at this stuff. This is not going to die on the vine. It's not going to die on the vine unless a lot of people were paid off and I didn't wasn't clued in. And if that's the situation, I need a phone call quickly. Okay, where my check is and where my paper bag and envelope is located in this situation. Because I put a lot of this together, guys. Matt Gaetz. That's Matt Gaetz. Okay, and keep an eye on this Matt Gaetz story, man. They're trying to bury this, but this is good. Either they're trying to lure him into some kind of complacency. And by the way, too, there's a whole nother thing, too, where this guy who's an Iranian hostage, and they extorted Matt Gaetz' father for $40 million to go rescue this hostage in Iran, and this other shady guy's involved. I've told the story several times before. I don't think anybody's ever explained this story on the radio like Ed Opperman has. We should have, just like, when you look up Ed Opperman and you go on Google Images, you see all these pictures of Jeffrey Epstein. We should have, Matt Gaetz' picture should be coming up next. This is the way we should be in this story. Okay, I'm getting a little impatient here. Got a lot of content. A lot of content. Let's see, 34 minutes. We're doing good. Okay, we got some news today. Now, you might know the story of the Kincora School for Boys. I believe it's in Ireland or Wales. I get that stuff confused, but I'm pretty sure it's Ireland. And we had on our show, exclusively, by the way, Richard Kerr. Okay, I did the first radio interview with Richard Kerr, who was one of those Kincora School for Boys. Now, very And he tells a story about this. These boys were used in intelligence operations. And, of course, they were ritually abused and sex trafficked out of this place. And one of the people he alleges were sex trafficking him was Roy Cohn, the attorney for Donald Trump for many, many years. The second man for Joe McCarthy, the New York City organized crime attorney. The Studio 54 guy who was there all the time. The guy who dated John Holmes, Johnny Wad from the porn star. Okay? And there's no explanation of how this little orphan, Richard Kerr, could be traveling around Europe in these fancy little suits, pictures of him in front of all kind of places in Europe, monuments and stuff. At the same time, Roy Cohn was traveling through there. There is no explanation for this. We didn't just interview Richard Kerr, who I heard from today, by the way, because some people tipped me off there. Because what the thing is there's been a ruling over there, okay, by the police ombudsman say, yes, these boys in the Kincora boys' home were abused. But they were failed. The police failed in their duty to the victims, okay? And she says the reason why there were systemic failings is because it was so difficult to report these things to the police at the time. There was no procedure. There was confusion. We didn't know how to do it. But what we know from my reporting on the Kincora School for Boys, which goes on to way more stuff, including Mac Wallace, I think his name is, who was one of the police investigating this stuff, who, when he was making too much trouble for the abusers in this, and with the high-level Protestants and the troubles and all that kind of stuff were involved in this, he was actually charged with murder and went to prison for 10 years. And when he got out, one of the first things he did was come on my show, and he's still screaming from the rooftop about what happened to these boys and how he was wrongly charged with murder. He's been cleared since then. It was a murder of his friend. But in my reporting on this story, we've talked to you about Richard Kerr. We talked to you about another young man who was abused in his own home by these people and these teachers and these officials from the Kincora School for Boys. So it wasn't just going on in the school. They were allowed to leave the school and worm their way into people's homes where they did it at people's homes. And then if they were charged, the records would get lost at the courthouse. This whole thing stinks from top to bottom. The Kincora School for Boys. And now after this, we got the big hearing. Yeah, the boys were systemically abused and raped, and the cops dropped the ball, is what they're saying now here. So they're kind of being vindicated, saying, yeah, we admit this stuff happened, but you're not getting any compensation for it. And also too that it was because of, it was just so confusing on how to report this. We didn't know how to do it. But meanwhile, the people who were investigating this were getting set up for murders. So what I'll probably do is, if I can come up with all the shows, because there's even some, there's a series of shows I did called Missing Without a Trace that also touches on this. And there's shows I did about Lord Mountbatten that also touches on all this. It's all connected. So I got to put that together in a package for you so you can listen to it maybe all in 1 week and maybe come to an understanding of how serious this is. And maybe Richard Kerr can come back or can at least recommend someone to come back. It's kind of funny the whole way I met Richard Kerr too, and put that interview together with him. Oh, okay. Well, here's another good one for you. The Trump and his friends and his allies and those mega MAGAs, right? Ultra MAGAs, as they call themselves, right? They wanted this special master to go over the evidence and see, well, what is attorney-client privilege? And then the judge even threw in, hey, you can also see if it's top secret, if it's not top secret, but that's been thrown out. There was a second, an appeal, and all that was thrown out. So now they got this special master in there with nothing to do except look for things that are attorney-client privilege. But what he decides to do on his own, and you gotta love this, man. The guy says, okay, I've heard some complaints from President Trump and his attorneys, okay, saying this in public, and his friends, Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan. Go check out the shows I've done about Jim Jordan in Ohio State University. I did some exclusive reporting for you there, too. We had Rocky Radcliffe on the show, who was one of the survivors of all that. He's also an attorney working on some of those cases. And he gave us some firsthand information on what went on in those locker rooms, right in front of Jim Jordan's nose. That there's no way, people didn't know what was going on. There's a lot more to that story than just, how could Jim Jordan not know? Okay. Hey. But all these guys are saying, well, the FBI must have planted evidence. So our special master, what's his name? Deary? Yeah, Judge Raymond Deary says, if they're saying that the FBI planted evidence, they should go over the itemized list provided by the Department of Justice and point out which ones are planted. Okay? And you've got a certain amount of time to do this. Now you got to come back and show the world with affidavits. Attorneys, you have to give now sworn affidavits on the record saying itemize what you're saying has been planted. Okay? So now if there's mention of those binders of photos that have my ears perked up, that I've been talking about for a couple of weeks, then we'll be on to something. So let's see what's going on with that. But I found that to be very amusing and very enlightening to myself. And let's see. What else? Prosecutors, Mar-a-Lago. Had some developments in the past week or two. Let's see. How did this come about? Okay. We had Megan Walsh, the daughter of John Walsh, on our show. And she's involved with a whole dispute with her parents over the custody of her children and Child Protective Services. So she's sort of become an advocate for parents who are having disputes with Child Protective Services. So much so that she's invited to a rally right in my area here in Clearwater. First it was in Clearwater, then it was going to be in Largo. So then it was going to be in the Pinellas Courthouse. So they don't quite, the locations I've been telling you aren't correct. The locations are to be determined, okay, at this point. So when I heard that she was going to be at this rally, started chatting back and forth with her on Twitter. And because also to Ira Peskowitz, who's the father of Bada Bing Girl, that Bada Barbie, Cash Me Outside, Burgle, that girl from the Dr. Phil show. I've had him on the show too. So he's going to be speaking at this event as well once they find a location. But she started talking about on her Twitter. She's very active on Twitter. You could follow her there, Megan Walsh, about how the kids on the milk cartons. And it was kind of funny, too, because I was watching a documentary on Netflix about anthrax, and who do I see there at an anthrax press conference is her dad, John Walsh. And as you know, I had on, I've done many shows about anthraxes, too, as well. And the FBI agent in charge of that. By the way, anybody that sues the FBI over anthrax gets paid. Okay, and that's a payday. Because they don't want that in the news. They don't want that coming to light. Now, she starts talking about this kid on the milk cartons, right? And I says, I reply back to her. I says, I ran into serial killer Richard Biegenwald. And what he told his attorney, his mafia attorney, by the way, Biegenwald was like a biker. And we had used his mother's house on Staten Island for a marijuana deal. I had these marijuana growers down in Tennessee. They would bring their marijuana up to Staten Island, and I would take it off their hands. We needed a location to do this. They knew Richard Biegenwald. who was a biker type himself and a self-confessed hitman for organized crime back in Staten Island and New Jersey. And he had killed a bunch of people, and about 6 of them were young women, okay? Now, in his house there, he had built a secret room with a secret door to the room. And he had snakes in there, poisonous snakes, and he was milking the venom. He had all kind of strange weapons he was designing and building himself. So when he started getting caught for these murders, he told his attorney, Lou Diamond, who was the best man at my attorney's wedding. They were best men at each other's wedding. I told the story about my attorney, Mr. La Rosa. Did a very touching when he passed away. I did a very heartfelt, what do you call it, when you honor him, you know, broadcast. But he told him, he says, you know those kids on those milk cartons? He goes, I'm responsible for a lot of those kids. He says, we take them and we sell their organs. Okay? And that's what, you know, I'm in the business of doing with those kids on those milk cartons. So Megan Walsh is talking about the milk cartons, and I says, oh, well, hey, well, look what serial killer Richard Biegenwald had to say about those milk cartons. And I posted a link to my interview with the author who wrote the book about Richard Biegenwald. So what happens, I get a message on Facebook saying, Ed, that guy with the marijuana from Tennessee, that's my uncle. Okay? And I looked him up recently. He's out of prison. By the way, when he had gone to prison, he got 25 years. He served 10 for marijuana back in those days. And right before he was, I guess, he was trying to make a deal, just like Greenberg. And he tried to set me up on the phone. He tried to call me up on the phone and say, hey, do you need any marijuana? I said, oh, no, I'm retired. I was going from Mexico back in those days. I didn't need him anymore. I had hugely expanded my operations by that point and didn't need this, 20-pound grower from Tennessee. And 20 pounds was nothing at that point. So he tried to set me up and get me involved in a pot deal that I would get to do time for. So anyway, he's out of prison. I'm talking to his niece. And now I'm either going to interview him, but the thing is, the most important thing of all that is with that story. Ooh. Oh, we got one of the people in the chat room says you need to watch the Gore Vidal and Roy Cohen interview discussion and see Gore zing Roy about little boys. Yeah, I'd like to see that. See a link to that, and I'll put it up. When we were there with Biegenwald, Biegenwald pulled a shotgun on me as a joke in the middle of his deal. But I knew I didn't have anything to worry about because I knew these guys. I Pete with me, Pete the Nut, Pete Peaches. He would never allow anything to happen to me. He loved me. He was 6'5", 300 pounds. He would never let anybody hurt me. And he knew Biegenwald too. Okay. So Biegenwald comes out with his shotgun. It's a big joke. Hey, it's a stick up, but I knew it was a joke. And Biegenwald was acting very erratic, very strange, laughing at his own jokes, very agitated. And as we were leaving, he pointed to a spot in the front lawn and said, this is where we bury the bodies. So now I have another witness. I want to do like a documentary film about this, or at least a book or something, and go there and recover those bodies. So working on that, I thought I had a film crew ready to go on that, but kind of got blown off. So, reaching out again to see what we can put together with that. So let's see. It's that. Oh, by the way, too, in this. Oh! I forgot all about this. New York District Attorney, New York State, filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and Trump Organization for the fraud. It's a $250 fraud lawsuit. That's one of the big things this week. It just came out. Now, this is huge. You got to remember, Don Jr. it was Eric, I think it was, used to have a charity for kids with cancer, and he's no longer allowed to have a charity in New York State because there was so much shenanigans with that money from the charity. The Trump Organization used to have a Trump Foundation. They used to have a charity, too. They're not allowed to run a charity. The Trump Organization also had Trump University, where they had to pay like $25 million back to people they ripped off. So every one of these actions from New York DA's office, they have lost. Okay, they've lost every single one. Now this one here, he's lost already, because when he went to a deposition, he pled the fifth. Okay? Now, when you plead the fifth in a civil case, you're saying, hey, man, if I tell you what I did here, I'm going to go to jail. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut. This is why you shouldn't always plead the fifth, okay? A lot of people think it's a joke, and you can get away without saying anything. It's not. You got to know what you're doing, and I believe whoever told them to plead the Fifth Amendment 400 times. Fifth Amendment is the right to not incriminate yourself, and not to admit to doing a crime. Okay. Now they're being sued for $250 million. They're going to lose this lawsuit. He should have settled a long time ago for $50 million, whatever. Got another $250 from the Saudis, because he's going to lose this lawsuit. Now, what the basis of the lawsuit is that they were overestimating the values and the appraisals of their properties and their businesses, and they were using phony profit and loss statements too as well. One example is he has a 10,000 square foot apartment that's his own personal property in Trump Plaza, Trump Tower. But he claimed it was 30,000 square feet. So that's triple. Okay. Also, too, there's properties he bought for $10 million that he said were worth $70 million like a year later. So this is going to be very, very easily proved that he's committed fraud. And just like they can't have a charity in New York, and just like they can't have a university in New York, they are not going to be allowed to have Trump Organization in New York State. I can almost promise you that. And take this from a guy who, and I told everyone to take a screenshot. I told you during the primary in 2015 that the man is going to wind up in prison. There is no way he's going to survive this with the taxes, with all the fraud and all this stuff. He's been pushing his luck his whole entire life. He's been a con man his whole entire life. He's going to wind up in prison. Okay, and I didn't think he was going to win. I thought he'd wind up in prison just for running. But I'm convinced now more than ever, because there's already been a criminal referral based on these fraud charges. Okay, he's going to be found liable because this is a lawsuit. Okay, this isn't a criminal indictment yet. Okay, but there definitely will be once all these documents are on the record. With the IRS. The IRS is going to file charges for this because they're telling, see what they overvalue the property. They tell the bank, hey, this property is worth $70 million. They pay $10 million for it, but they say, hey, listen, it's worth $70 million because look, there's 300 more square feet than we told you there was. So loan us $50 million. So they're borrowing more than the property is really worth. Okay. Now, when you lie on those financial applications, or you turn in fake tax returns or fake profit and loss statements and this kind of stuff that everyone says, you can get away with this. You can't get away. Certain people can't get away with this. I can't get away with that. Okay. And I've been around these kind of people, these organized crime folks, my whole freaking life since I was 19 years old, 18 years old. And that's one of the big things they get charged with. And usually they throw in some mail fraud charges, too, because they mail in some documents. And if you use the U.S. Postal Service to receive a check for any of these, or even, I think even if you get like a bank statement, you fill out a phony return for application for a loan, bank fraud, and then you get a bank statement in the mail later on, they can charge you with mail fraud. And I've seen this in organized crime cases when I used to do all those organized crime cases back in the 80s. Seen it 100 times, man. So, and then even when I was just getting my mortgage, they were saying, oh, you can get away with this. I said, no, I can't get away with it. I can't get away with that. Okay, maybe your other clients can get away with that, but I can't get away with that. Because I'm not stupid, man. I know what I'm doing. Let's see. Oh, good. Thank God we're out of time. I'm losing my voice. So, guys, thank you so much. Now, we had a week where I wasn't able to post the podcast shows on Facebook. So we took a huge, 30% hit this week. So if anybody wants to go out, I had my birthday. I didn't get one happy birthday Patreon subscription. So, if you got a monthly subscription, and you change that to a yearly subscription, you get a 10% discount. Now, not only didn't I, okay, not only didn't I get one Patreon for my birthday. Happy birthday, Ed. And then I got hit on Facebook. They shut down the YouTube channel. Okay, so now all the people that would go to YouTube and see the Spreaker link and click on that, and I would get a couple of pennies from that, that's gone too. I had to buy a car, and I had to put a new air conditioning in the house here. On top of all that, Spreaker did not send me my check last month. They're going to be sending me 2 checks next month. So right now, I am up to my neck funding my life in credit card bills. So if you ever wanted to make a donation or you ever wanted to advertise on the Opperman Report, contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. That's my PayPal email if you want to make a nice, generous donation. Okay, if you want to advertise, or you can go to Opperman Report Patreon if you want to help out over there and, get a yearly membership, man. I put up new content there 4 or 5 times a week, and there's a lot of free stuff there too as well. So guys, thank you so much. We're out of time. Coming up after this will be the Frank Sinatra show with Mike Rothmiller. Good night. And now a word from our sponsors.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland Street Scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking, true stories need no embellishment.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at KMDlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to KMDlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.